Auburn's QB depth chart is practically set, but how deep is this depth chart? Welcome on into the Auburn Express, powered by the Rapport. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making us your first listen of every single day. Joining me as he does every single Friday is my good friend Ike Jones to talk a little Auburn football. Today we're talking quarterback. We're going to go over that depth chart, continuing our series of reviewing every single position group. And then we're going to talk about potential scenarios for Auburn football at quarterback here in the second half. Let's start at the top with the depth chart. Before we get into it, Ike, your overall thoughts on the position that Auburn finds themselves here in year 3 of Hugh Freeze's tenure at quarterback. You've got Jackson Arnold, who is the guy that they wanted in the portal. They gave him whatever dollars he needed to get. You brought in your high-profile freshman, one of the highest-rated recruits in Auburn history, and Deuce Knight. He seems to be progressing a lot faster than a lot of people thought he would. And then you got Ashton Daniels coming in here in the summer. He just got to campus a couple weeks ago, and he brings a certain experience that should set a safe floor for you in that QB room.
Yeah, this is a talented room. I don't want to back off of that statement at all. I think a lot of people who are fans of a particular program, regardless, that have not had a lot of success, are scared to get their hopes up, right? I don't necessarily have my hopes up in a lot of things, but I'm not going to back off of the idea that this is a tremendously talented quarterback room. I just got through doing a lot of film review on all these quarterbacks that actually have collegiate snaps, and I feel pretty good about where they sit. Deuce Knight is the wild card here because he is a guy who is more talented than they thought he was going to be coming in, which means I think they're very ready to be able to make it work this season with whatever quarterback they tried out there this year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch. Let's jump into the depth chart here and talk about who Auburn has coming at quarterback. In that third spot, we're anticipating none other than your boy Ashton Daniels, who we just mentioned. The Stanford transfer brings in a lot of playing experience to the Plains. So if you're Hugh Freeze, you go out and you get Ashton Daniels because you need that experience to set a safe floor in your QB room this coming season. Last year at Stanford, Ashton Daniels passed for 1,700 yards at a 62% clip. That was 170 completions on 270 attempts. He also had 10 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. He was sacked 20 times. You don't love that touchdown to interception ratio for Ashton Daniels, but he's played a lot of football. The prior year at Stanford in 2023, he passed for 2,200 yards. Certainly, he's going to have to do a lot better than that as Auburn's quarterback, but he'll have a lot better weapons to play with.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Ashton Daniels is similarly to the thing with Jackson Arnold is you have to look at the weapons that were around him last season and the offensive line. Stanford's offensive line just wasn't very good last year. They just weren't. You look at the pass attempts there, they weren't asking him to throw the ball a lot because they didn't really have a lot of guys to throw to. They had one really big receiver. And the one critique, or the biggest critique, I should say, that I do have of Ashton Daniels when watching his film, and if you're Green Name Gang, you have three games worth of film to go out there and watch that I've already done film review for on Ashton Daniels. Go and check that out, and you'll see this exactly as I'm saying it. Is every now and then he just puts the ball in harm's way for no reason, and he felt like he was forcing the ball to who was their primary receiver. And if that sounds a lot like Auburn last year with Peyton Thorne, it's a good reason, because it sounds like a combination of the first 2 years of Peyton Thorne, where it was like he's probably running more than he needs to be running, even though I think Ashton Daniels is a supremely talented athletic runner, and puts the ball in harm's way sometimes when he probably shouldn't, right? Like that feels very Peyton Thorne-ish in the minds of Auburn fans if you're looking at the last 2 years' productivity from the quarterback position. But what you do get from him is a supremely talented athlete, supremely, like, I think underrated how good a runner Ashton Daniels is. I mean, you didn't mention the rushing yards that he has there. If you can look it up, I don't know what they were last year, but I saw him go out there and absolutely blister defenses with his ability to run the football, designed runs for him a lot in those scenarios. Mike G, prepare for your ears to bleed when you hear me say this phrase.
All
But
right.
I'm going to say it, and I've said it in our film review sessions. First time I've said it in front of the paywall. I expect a Wildcat package for Ashton Daniels this coming season to be a thing for Auburn football. I expect them to bring him in short yardage and red zone scenarios as a Wildcat quarterback. And I expect him to be productive in that role for Auburn because he does actually have a good arm. He, in my opinion, is he's a bigger version of what they wanted to do last year with Sam Jackson, and he is a better throwing version of what they did in year one with Robbie Ashford.
Okay. All right. Listen, if he's a better thrower, I can stomach it. Just as long I don't think that it's the Wildcat itself more so than it is the timing of those play calls that
100%.
drive me absolutely crazy in critical moments. But certainly Ashton Daniels does bring a certain experience to that QB room that you definitely want if you're Hugh Freeze. So many times we've seen SEC teams have to go to their backup QB for meaningful playing time. You hate if you had to get to your third QB. Hell, UCF went to their fourth QB
Right.
by mid-season and nobody got hurt, Ike. Just poor play by the first three guys, and Gus was on his fourth QB. So you definitely need more than one guy that can do the jobs. Ashton Daniels is a
To the
guy.
point of that, Sam Jackson, 5'10", 190, Ashton Daniels, 6'2", 215, right? Like,
Yeah, they're not the same guy.
It's not the same kind of situation. You've got a bigger guy that has a better arm than what you had first year with Robbie Ashford. So I expect to see it. Like, I'm calling it now. The first time he trots out there in the middle of a series and Auburn fans groan all over social media about, oh, we're doing the QB switching thing. Know that Ike Jones called this back in June that you would see this.
Ashton Daniels joins Auburn football in that third spot. Potentially, we'll see how that plays out in fall camp. Next on the list is a guy who everybody knows, and that is Deuce Knight, potentially QB2 here. But if some are to be believed, there's going to be a battle between him and Ashton Daniels for that second spot. I can believe that. I don't want to see it, though. And the reason I don't want to see it is because if he gets outplayed, I wonder what position that puts him in next year. Now, I think Ashton Daniels only has 1 year left to play, so he won't be battling Ashton Daniels. But I don't think I want to see Deuce in that third spot. And if I can live with a 1A 1B situation. I can't live with a C situation for Deuce Knight. He's got to be your guy here in a couple of years if you're Hugh Freeze. As I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, one of the highest rated recruits in Auburn history, Deuce Knight. All reports are he's come along a lot faster than they thought he would, making plays with both his legs and his arms. But particularly with his arm, he was having a really good camp up until 8A where he threw a few picks. But those are things that could easily be corrected, just about speed of the game and what he's seeing out there. So they went back to the film, I'm sure, and got those things corrected for Deuce Knight. But Deuce Knight could be a guy for Auburn football here in 2025 and beyond. Talk to me about Deuce Knight, man. I don't know what can be said about this kid that hasn't already been said, but man, is he talented.
Yeah, listen, he's a big guy as well, 6'4", 213. Now, I don't expect them to bring Deuce Knight in as a Wildcat quarterback. Like, I think that they, as mobile as I think Deuce is, I think they're going to make that the Ashton Daniels package. But Deuce Knight is a guy, to your point, supremely talented and one of the most highly recruited guys on the offensive side that Auburn's ever had coming out of high school. I anticipate Deuce Knight being right there in the conversation for QB2. I am not as adamant that he needs to be QB2 just because I don't think, going into that next season, because here's the scenario, right? If your QB1 doesn't finish the season for any reason other than injury, right? Like he's playing poorly and he gets supplanted by someone else, that means the competition for QB1 going into that next year, I think it's going to be Deuce Knight leading the charge in that, regardless of whether or not he is going to be the next guy off of the bench for Auburn. But to your point, he is the future. And so how long do you wait to realize that future? The only way I see this going in the favor of Ashton Daniels in the early portions of the season is if injury is the reason why, and it's not poor play. I think if it's 4 or 5 games into the season, you're like, okay, this isn't working for our QB1, you go to the new guy. If it's 2 or 3 games into the season, then maybe you go with the guy who has a little bit more playing experience and see if he can get you through a couple of games just off of his ability to be athletic out there and go make plays, while you're still getting your freshman phenom accustomed to the speed of the game. But yeah, I don't know. I think right now I'm putting Deuce Knight in at QB2 just because he's got more experience in the system and he is your future. And so there's not a real reason to not have him primed to be ready to be the guy in case your number one is not ready to be the guy.
I agree. Look, Deuce Knight's development or lack thereof will be a referendum on this staff and their ability to be able to identify and develop talent. At some point, your recruiting is at an all-time high, and I would say he's as close to a can't-miss QB recruit as Auburn has had since we've been following Auburn going back to the early 2000s.
I think Bo Nix should have been a can't miss recruit.
Yep.
And again, it was, I think, the position that the coaching staff put him in that was the ultimate detriment to his ability to succeed in the way in which he should have been able to succeed at Auburn. But now you get an opportunity, new coach, new can't miss 5-star guy out of high school. Can't screw this one up if you're Auburn, or you repeat those narratives of Auburn is the place where 5 stars go to die.
No, I agree. Deuce Knight is your QB2. QB1 is somebody who is a stranger to none of us. No one here at the Rapport and the Auburn fan base. That's Jackson Arnold. He checks in at QB1 for Hugh Freeze and company. Look, he named Jackson Arnold his starter before the spring was over. Mm-hmm. He brought him here at the start. He talked about how he recruited him prior to his time at Auburn when he was in high school. Hugh Freeze said he thought he was a freak then, thinks he's a freak now. This is a guy that they wanted, the former 5-star QB. Jackson Arnold brings in a lot of playing experience as well, too, from Oklahoma. But Oklahoma had a lot of noted problems on offense, particularly with all the injuries at wide receiver last year. He won't have that issue this year at Auburn. Don't see everybody getting hurt, but if guys do get hurt, there's a bunch of receiver talent backing up the talent here in this room. Jackson Arnold opted against going to the Manning passing camp this offseason to build chemistry with his wide receivers. I love what you're hearing about Jackson Arnold here on the Plains in Hugh Freeze's 3rd year. Talk to me about Jackson Arnold, man. We did a segment recently where we talked about how ready is he going to be game one. What's the level of freak out if Jackson Arnold rolls out against Baylor and Waco and throws like 4 picks on the road and less than 200 yards? Is the level of freak out going to hit an all-time high?
Yeah, no, it absolutely will. Like, you can go ahead and chalk it up that there will be complete meltdown, because that is the nature of a fan base in limbo right now. Honestly, like you're waiting for something good to happen so that you can finally start to feel good about the direction of your program. And if that does not happen, game 1 versus Baylor, and it looks disastrous out there, then listen, I'm not even going to be mad at people for freaking out if it happens like that in game 1 versus Baylor, because this is one of those situations where you need to be able to put a strong showing out there, particularly offensively. I think people will be a little less on the freak out meter if it's the defense that falters, because in your mind, the defense is going to get better. This was some sort of fluke, and oh my God, Baylor's got a really great offense. If the offense goes out there and looks bad, it's immediately going to be Jackson Arnold was the bust that everybody thought he was going to be, and Hugh Freeze can't coach anymore. Like, that is the bottom line, point blank, period, how that narrative is going to get spun out of that situation. But, Jackson Arnold, he's got the tools. The question is, Does he know how to deploy them on game days in big games? Because you haven't really seen it yet, other than, a bowl game appearance for him in his freshman season at Oklahoma that had people saying, oh, well, man, this kid, he's everything that they hyped him up to be. And then you get into the next season and it looks completely different. New offensive coordinator, offensive line is banged up, receivers are banged up, and he doesn't look good out there. And so now you say to yourself, okay, maybe Jackson Arnold's not the kind of guy who elevates everybody else around him. He needs other guys to elevate him, but he's got all the stuff in his tool bag. Question is, with all the tools around him, is he going to be able to go out there and make it happen? And yet to be seen. To be determined.
To be determined, indeed. I think that they've set a situation up around him where, look, he doesn't have to do all the lifting on his own. And so many times in college football, we see fans feel like it's the quarterback's job to save the team offensively. Right. I think that Jackson Arnold is going to have a great running game. They bolstered the offensive line. They've given him every single wide receiver tool that he could possibly need to be successful. He's just got to go out there and manage the game well, make big throws from time to time, but mostly just protect the football, which I think he's proven he can do. So that is your wide receiver room. Again, let's take a look at it. Ashton Daniels, Deuce Knight, and Jackson Arnold, Auburn's QB room for 2025. Will these guys be able to get it done? And what scenarios are they facing this coming season? We'll talk about that right after a quick word from our sponsors.
This episode of the Auburn Express is brought to you by our friends at the Vibe Vault. You can find them at 3462 Crosswinds Road, Suite E in Phoenix City, Alabama. That's right across the street from the Chattahoochee Valley Community College, next to Renfro's Supermarket and Marco's Pizza. The Vibe Vault. If you're in the Columbus, Phoenix City area and you're looking to get fresh for the weekend, get fresh for the weekend with the Vibe Vault. Not just barbers, lifestyle consultants.
This episode of the War Report is brought to you by our friends at the Rogue Shop. Visit rogueshop.com. Use code REPORT to get 15% off your Rogue Shop order. Pain, sleep, stress, anxiety, whatever ails you in life, the Rogue Shop has something that has you covered. Visit them today and get your Rogue Shop order in. Also want to thank our friends at Golden's Cast Iron. Visit goldenscastiron.com/WR. Use code Get Your Weight Up for 15% off your weights and code TWR for $65 off fire pits and Kamado grills. Summer is here. You want to be outside grilling or just getting in shape with some Golden's Cast Iron weights. Work out, grill out, chill out with Golden's Cast Iron. So jump back into the conversation here, Ike, to close this segment. What are the potential scenarios that Hugh Freeze has to worry about this coming fall? Now, we talked about potential poor play from Jackson Arnold. I want to go on record again. I'm in the camp that I think that Jackson Arnold's going to play well. I think he's going to play well enough for Auburn to win. I will have less questions about him and more questions about what they're asking him to do and how the play calls are being managed if he is not successful. But in the case that it is clear that maybe he's not playing well, how comfortable are they going to feel going to Deuce Knight? Or do they say, you know what, we don't want to rattle our true freshman too quickly, so this is why we brought Ashton Daniels here. Deuce is still the future, but Ashton can take the wheel for now.
Yeah, I mean, I think the disastrous type of scenario, let's just go to the first point of failure, and that is an injury, right? Like if somehow you get an injury to QB1, and at what point in the season that happens, who do you turn to say, hey, it's your football, go out here and win us the football game going forward? I don't know. Again, I don't know. I think the earlier in the season that happens, the more likely that is going to be Ashton Daniels, just because he's got the experience.
Okay.
But once you get past, I think, that Georgia game, you turn into Deuce Knight territory, where it's like, whether it is mediocre play, because I think poor play prior to that, you pivot off of, your QB1 if he's just playing just awful, right? Like you don't have the luxury of going out there and laying an egg and losing Oklahoma and Texas A&M because your quarterback's not playing well. You've got to figure something out early in the season. But once you get past the Georgia game, I think you get into Deuce Knight territory of like, okay, it's time to turn it over to somebody else if it's poor to inadequate play from the quarterback position or some sort of injury happens. Second point of failure here is somehow injuries, poor play happened with the offensive line. And it just doesn't look as if there's going to be enough protection for the quarterback to be able to get the ball to all of these talented receivers that they have out of there. They're just not running the ball well enough, that sort of situation. I think in that scenario, it becomes an Ashton Daniels show again, because I do think that he's the guy that they'd rather have out there dodging would-be defenders than your future Deuce Knight trying to stand behind a porous offensive line. In any other scenario out there, it's Deuce Knight.
Yeah, again, can't stress enough. You hope plan A works for Hugh Freeze, especially in year 3. But you made an interesting comment about once you get past the Georgia game, it kind of becoming Deuce Knight territory and early in the season. How much does Deuce going through spring practice at Auburn factor into this? If you're Ashton Daniels, yes, you've got experience, but also you just got to campus literally like 14 days ago. You got there at the end of May, and he's got some catching up to do as far as developing chemistry with the wide receivers, maybe even finding his voice as a leader. You need your quarterback to be a leader in there. I think he could be behind the 8 ball in some ways, but still has that thing hanging over Deuce that, look, he is a true freshman and he has not started the game at the college level. What do you think the tendency of this staff is going to be? Is it going to be experience over talent, or what will it take to go with what is clearly the more talented player, but not the more experienced player?
Yeah, the reason why I think that would be the scenario there is because I think what you're going to do is you're just going to go back into your shrink the playbook mode, and you're going to say, all right, we can manufacture some stuff with Ashton Daniels that doesn't require him to have a full grasp of this system, but he's coming from a system in Stanford that had some RPO elements, so he's not going to be unfamiliar with the concepts, and he's a really smart kid. Listen, I don't care what people, you don't go to Stanford and you're not smart. Like so his ability to pick up and go out there, he's got the physical tools to be able to go out there and get it done. To your point, I don't know that he is as talented as a Deuce Knight is, but the combination of experience and physical tools, I think, puts you in a position where you're willing to say, we just need you to get us through these next couple of games. And even really, like, you've got the bye week right there before Georgia. It being a home game, I say you get past Georgia, but I think during that bye week, you're essentially preparing Ashton Daniels to be a Band-Aid so that you're ready to hand it over to Deuce Knight if it goes poorly versus Georgia, or you're ready to say, all right, Deuce Knight is going to be your show. We just need to get through this last big game right here. And I think the record has a lot to do with that as well. Like, if you're in a situation where the early struggles have put you behind the 8 ball and you've already got 2 losses, maybe you're a little bit more willing to go to Deuce Knight to say, hey, if it's not an offensive line issue and it's just we need to be able to go out here and manufacture points, you've got the experience in the system, you've got the talent. Let's go out here and see if you can be the guy. Because, again, you still do have the ability to pivot to Ashton Daniels if it doesn't go well with Deuce.
Yeah. I can't stress enough. This is going to be the most important position group for Hugh Freeze here this year. I think that we have less questions as we've gone through these position group segments about a lot of the other rooms in anticipation of how they're going to perform. You've bolstered your offensive line. Your running back room has great talent and experience returning. Your wide receivers are all world, right? Your defense should be top 15. If your Hugh Freeze quarterback will be the thing that gets you over the hump and maybe saves you or buries you by putting too much of the lifting on everybody else. Can Ashton Daniels, Deuce Knight, and Jackson Arnold be the answer for Auburn football in 2025? I think we're going to get an idea as of game 1, August 29th versus Baylor in Waco. Great conversation as always. Guys, that's it for another great edition of the Auburn Express by the War Rapport. If you're in the comments after the video, do us a favor. Help support our content by smashing that super thanks button. We appreciate all your support there. Guys, we'll be back at you again with another edition of the Auburn Express on Monday. If you want more content like this, please hit like and subscribe. We are the War Report on every social media platform. TW Rapport on TikTok. We're signing off, and as always, War Eagle.